Live from deep in a bunker here in the People's Republic of California, we've got news to report on Article 5. We might be looking at number 20 coming up very soon with the Convention of States movement. So state legislatures around the country are on fire right now. They're all dealing with their daily business, but some of that business that's coming before them is being brought there by the grassroots, and it's the resolution to call for a convention of states for proposing amendments to the Constitution to restrict the power of the federal government. Folks, this is how we play offense.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I don't want you to ride. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for jumping on. It is a short notice broadcast, but I wanted to get this out before Monday because Monday may be the day. So we have some great news coming out of Wyoming, some setbacks in other areas. I wanted to cover that with you just to let you know where exactly we are with the process. For those of you who are new to the Convention of States movement, we have 19 states on board. It basically, the Convention of States is the method. It is the solution for the people to fight back. We know what all the problems are. We see all the problems every day, but how do we fight back is the question that everyone asks. And if you don't have a solution, it doesn't matter what the problem is. And so this is the solution. And basically what it is, the states will call convention. We need 34, 2/3 of the states, 34 states to sign, to submit petitions, which are these resolutions that they're passing. 19 states are on board. 2/3 equals 34 states. We are now currently in active legislative session, so a lot of action is going on right now. We reported to you previously that New Hampshire had passed committee. However, New Hampshire was knocked out at the House. So there are 400 legislators in New Hampshire, and it is difficult to educate all of them in one shot. But there was significant progress over last year. So with that being said, the grassroots in New Hampshire, I am 100% confident I've listened to them. They're still fired up. They're still trying. We need more people there, right? The more, the better. And in New Hampshire in particular, New Hampshire, they've got 400 legislators in the House, okay? They have more districts than anything you've ever seen. Each district has about 3,000 people in it. So very small districts. If you live in New Hampshire, you can absolutely make a difference. All right, you can absolutely make a difference. So they've got some educating to do. And as we've shown you, these legislatures, they've been at this now for 10 years. All right. But the momentum has just started picking up in the last couple of years. And I think we all know why. Right. And the reality of the matter is the more people that are jumping on board, I think we're 5 million strong or so across the country that Cause Action has as a part of their organization that have signed on and are helping in some way. Those people, all right, are the ones who are making the difference. And what they're doing is they're educating these legislators to try and undo the madness or the fear tactics, I should say, that is being pumped into these legislators who don't fully understand American history in these areas, who don't fully understand the constitutional value of Article 5 and are easily scared. And don't hate on them for that. These are regular state legislators, are regular people like us. We all know the Constitution, but I guarantee you, if I grab the most diehard patriot I can find around with flags waving and he's all into it, if I start quizzing him on Article 5 in the history of, he likely will stumble. And the reason is it's never been used before in American history. All right, because it's never been needed before. Well, it's been needed, but it's never been needed as badly as it is now. It's there for one reason only, and the option to call this convention is there for one reason and one reason only, and that's to restrict the power of the federal government. If it was anything that we thought the federal government would sign on for or propose on their own, then we wouldn't need to call a convention, which has been the case in the past. Previous attempts to call conventions have ended in Congress just making the proposals they needed to make. So, and the three topics are term limits for all federal officials, not just elected. So if you're one of those people who are like, I'm against term limits because elections are term limits, well, I want to know who voted for the guy with the little thing in his ear with the black suit on and the sunglasses who's been there for 40 years telling even presidents that there are things that they don't need to know. I want to know who voted for that guy because I don't know anybody that voted for that guy. So that argument's dead. Fiscal restraints is the second one. Enough said. Do I even have to explain that? But balanced budget amendment is the one that will absolutely come out of that. I'm as close to 100% sure that would get ratified that I don't even really think about it. And then the third one is amendments on government overreach of power and authority. These are issues that everyone agrees on. There are more than 50% of even Democrats agree on those topics. Okay. And when you factor in the people who aren't sure, it's like 75% of Democrats even don't oppose the amendment topics. All right. The Republicans are up at like 92% don't oppose, and the independents are around 89 or so percent that don't oppose. Okay. So the trick is to educate those people in the gray areas. That's what the trick is. Danny Mayer, how are you, sir? Welcome aboard from Facebook. We got Tom Shin here. Hello, all we need is a cause before the next election. Yeah, I would love to see it happen before the next election. I'm guessing it's going to happen probably just after in that 2024, 2025 legislative session. It might. The 2024 legislative session would have already taken place by the time November comes. So it is possible. It is possible, but for sure. And then what about your state? Yeah. So California is where I'm in. The People's Republic of California are one of the handful on the list that won't entertain the idea. Unfortunately, it's not that grassroots aren't working out here. We are. I mean, the grassroots, I've been to a few events that have gone on here. It's just, we all know New York and California are tough nuts to crack. And I know, the leadership in New York is solid with Silverwolf, and we've had her on, and, it's a tough nut to crack. But that being said, we don't need New York and California anyway. We can get this done. We need 34 states and 38 to ratify. All right. That means that leaves room for 12 doo-doo states, to be out there. Even Massachusetts, Mike Arnold is making progress in. So it's not like just because they're leftist states, they can't be won. But right now, California has certainly been a challenge for sure. But Wyoming, however, has passed the House, or is it the Senate? Let me quickly look this up. I believe they passed one chamber, but there's so many different states passing so many different things that it sometimes gets confusing. But the beauty of Wyoming is that they have passed the all right, so they passed House committee, so they passed the House. So they're in the Senate now. They passed Senate committee, so now they're going to a vote in the Senate. If it passes there, they're looking to have this on Monday. So it could be as early as Monday that we know that we can pull up and announce state number 20, which would be absolutely awesome. Absolutely. The key here is momentum, right? So, I mean, to get 20 states on board, and 4 came on just last year, with others being close. And we still know New Hampshire is looking pretty good. We've got a lot of good feelings about Kansas. Iowa passed 2 subcommittees and then passed the first committee. So that's moving forward. There's a lot going on. We got Idaho. They're working hard in both chambers of Idaho. Apparently leadership there in the House and Senate are on board, but that's not a guarantee that everyone will follow leadership. But it is a great sign right now for Idaho. Virginia passed committee, so there's a lot. There's a lot of legislators that were not entertaining the idea in the past who are entertaining it now, and that's what we're looking for. That's the result of grassroots being able to go in and make a difference and educate these legislators. I was talking on the last broadcast. There were legislators there who were they say it over and over again, but there were a handful that had said it in these current sessions across the states. One guy was mentioning, I was against this before I started reading into it and learning about it. And the reason I learned about it is because one of my constituents came to me and asked me to sit down for tea and just have a conversation with him. And when he explained that he had generally been opposed, the representative did, but he wasn't overly familiar with it. That's the stance of a lot of legislators that are out there, is that they're opposed, but when you ask them if they're familiar with it, the answer is usually not really. And the reason for that, why would they be opposed if they're not that familiar? Because people like JBS, John Birch Society, people like Common Cause, the Soros group, Media Matters, most of it is Soros. The only conservative group that would ever align with Soros is John Birch Society. So, with that being said, those groups will actually approach these legislators and give them fear tactic propaganda of all kinds of historically inaccurate. We're so used to the historical inaccuracies now, right? But they'll give them all this fear tactic stuff, scare the bejesus out of them. And if they don't go ahead and read up on it on their own, then they're going to vote against. What's good news is that the grassroots have been out there dropping the facts. And if you don't understand Article 5 and you're not, you haven't done your reading, you don't understand the logistics of it, I encourage you to read the John Birch Society stuff that says it's all going to go crazy and we're going to rewrite the Constitution. Be afraid, be very afraid. The Publius Holders out there, Common Cause, George Soros's groups, all of those coconuts, the League for Women Voters who keeps showing up, like another, obviously another far Marxist group. You can go to their website. It doesn't take much reading there to figure it out. These people. I encourage you to go listen to what they're saying and the fear tactics they're promoting. The only thing that I say is that when you're done listening to all their fear tactics about how the world's going to end if we use our constitutional power, I want you to go to Cause University and read some of the documentation there and watch some of the material there and then compare both. Look for the moments where each side quotes the founders and uses examples from our history, and then go vet the context of those quotes. And what you will find is what everybody finds when they objectively listen to both sides, is that one side is completely taking history and quotes out of context, and the other side is just telling you what they said. And when the truth is on your side, you're more than happy to let people listen, encourage people to listen to the other side. It's when the truth is not on your side that you have to resort to the types of tactics and things that people like John Birch Society, which is really just a cult, but the people in that space or in that Marxist space, we all know Marxists have done this forever, right? So that Soros space, they have to use tactics. They have to misquote things. They have to take them out of context. They got to convince you, through debacles and trickery that what they're saying is true. And when you read and you see, you source each side's information, you're going to see the truth. Mike Arnold, state director in Massachusetts, Kenneth Quinn, who's got a great site. If you're interested to hear more about what I'm saying about John Birch Society, called All Things Article 5. I mean, he just tears them apart. Right now, this Robert Brown from John Birch owes him $10,000 and just won't pay. And is just insisting. He put out a $10,000 challenge, and Kenneth killed it in 5 separate examples in 5 separate videos, and the dude won't pay. As a matter of fact, these doo-doo-doos are still showing up at state legislatures talking about this guy has a $10,000 challenge and no one's claimed. No, we've claimed it. You won't pay it. There's a big difference. So check that out for yourself. But Wyoming, I did not expect to be number 20. But if we can pull this off on Monday, number 20 they will be. And we will be on the way, right? On the way. My prediction was when we get to 23, we'll start to hear, excuse me, we'll start to hear, we'll start to see John Birch Society people on, MSNBC 2-3 times a week talking about how the Constitution is going to get rewritten and it's going to be crazy and it's going to be hell. The Second Amendment rights are going to get taken. They're going to do everything they can to scare you, despite the fact that John Birch Society was wholeheartedly trying to get a convention of states called years ago for what they called the Liberty Amendments. Oddly enough, is what Levin calls them. But they had their own version of Liberty Amendments that they were trying to get a convention. Spent many years trying to get a convention called for, and now are like the biggest advocates going around trying to stop it. Any organization that does a 180 like that is suspect. I'm sorry. You either have core principles or you don't. That's not a small issue. You're either for or against. You can't be both. So if you're against now, something changed. And the question is, what changed? Because it's not the Constitution. It's not history. That didn't change. So what exactly changed? Those people are all dootaroos. The insurgency won't be helping. Yeah, the insurgency. Look, speaking of that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the. I don't know if you guys have heard, but I guess McCarthy has released all the January 6th footage to Tucker and Tucker Carlson. And while on one front, I'm like, all right, if you're going to pick one person, Tucker would be the guy that I would probably pick to do it. And not that I like anybody on Fox News, but Tucker is one gem that is bigger than Fox News. And so I'm okay with it on that front. But on the other hand, I'm like, dude, just put it out there. Just put it out there. Let the millions of independent citizen journalists dig through this stuff and make our own conclusions. Because no matter how good, Tucker's team goes through the footage and sees what he's going to see, there's only so much he's going to present because he's got an hour-long show. I want to see it all. And when this stuff first came out, I was, obviously, I mean, I think the vast majority of the country knows that the kangaroo court of the January 6th commission is a joke. So I'm not going to get too deep into that. But like, there's footage out there, even footage that I had to go and dig up back when this was a serious story. I went and dug up footage and literally examples. I took a couple clips just to show them in case, maybe you guys haven't had the time to do that kind of digging and get that kind of footage. But like, there were a couple of examples that I brought to bear that you'll never see in the January 6th trial. And I don't know that they'll even be in Tucker's stash now because they weren't body cams from the cops. But I'm dying to hear what the cops that are involved in this one clip that I'm going to show you, what they were saying to each other while they were doing this. And what they were doing, the protesters were literally standing there with their hands in the air, yelling, "Hands up, don't shoot." And what they got for that, all right, was flashbangs fired indiscriminately into the middle of the crowd, where they actually hit a Cuban American who happened to be with a Chinese American. And what they had to say was great. That'll be in the second clip. The first clip, I just want you to see footage that they'll never show you. And I did put this out there for those of you who followed me for a long time. I did once put this out there already, but now I'm going to do it just because I know we've gained a lot of followers since then, especially on Facebook. I think we've gained some, we're up to like almost 16,000 now. So the other channels, is less, but they've never distributed this. Facebook just recently started shadow banning us. But I want to show you this. I want to show you the first footage, January 6th. This is the protesters are yelling, "Hands up, don't shoot," and you'll see what happens. So I say you can hear the guy. You guys started this, right? So like this, what I want to hear from these tapes is the other end of that exchange right there. I want to hear what the Capitol Police with their crocodile tears and their nonsense in this January 6th, kangaroo court. I want to hear what those people on the ridge were saying as they were firing those flashbangs into the crowd, because they did hit someone with it. Now he thought it was tear gas. When they got hit with it, they thought it was tear gas. But it's more probable that now that we go in hindsight that it was one of those flashbang canisters. But he's a Cuban American and a Chinese American, and what they had to say is something that every Marxist and communist loving person in this country should listen to, because these are the people who would know.
We're from China, you know.
Okay, so it goes around
This country can't go to be a socialist country or a communist country.
Hey, I was born in Cuba. My parents were political prisoners in my own country.
we know exactly what will happen.
You can't let this happen.
You see that Chinese woman sitting there? She's got her American flag hat on. She's about as American as it freaking gets. And she's sitting there telling you because she knows. She knows. They both know what they're experiencing right there. All right. And they're both trying to say, like, you can't let this happen. Now, my first not my first reaction, but after looking at it a few times, I'm like, well, you're with us, right? But so you can't let this happen either. But it took some time for me to kind of process it. But I think what he's saying there is like, you don't understand. I do. Like, I won't let this happen, but I'm afraid you will. I'm afraid you will, Mr. Have lived in America all your life and really haven't experienced communism on the level that I'm talking about. My parents were political prisoners, and she, God knows what she's seen coming from China, but you can hear that she's first generation. So she's definitely got some tales to tell as far, and it was probably got here and has been thanking her lucky stars to get out of there and be here. And now she's seeing stuff like this. And this type of thing is what we're fighting against, right? This type of thing is what we're fighting against. So it just drives me nuts. I'm absolutely curious to see what Tucker releases with this, but I really hope at the same time that after he's done, they give this to everybody. If they do that, then I'm okay with it. Then I don't have a big problem with it. It was just weird to me that you would give it to one person and not, and not do anything else. We got some comments here. Let me get into this. All right, so we got Joy DeMoy Tyler over on Facebook. Mike Lindell said he's going to sue for it also. Yeah, and Lindell got a raw deal too. I mean, he's out there a little bit, but he's a patriot, and and look, the guy's got money. He's not one of these crazy elites type of money, but he's got he's a millionaire, and he spent a good portion of that money to try and get to the truth. So, God bless him. I hope all goes well for him. And then, Barbara Norman says, good for Mike Lindell. Yeah, absolutely. Fight back, right? Fight back on all fronts. And this is what we mean when we say play offense, right? Because I got T-shirts in the store selling, say play offense for Article 5. I'm tired of playing defense, right? That's the point that I'm in. I'm tired. These people, they want to give me this education of stuff that I already know, the history of the Rothschilds, America's a corporation. And that's all well and good. But like in the end, we wake up every morning, and it seems like every morning anyway, to some news story of, people doing stuff in our government that pisses us off, right? I mean, more money to Ukraine, stoking the fires of that whole war, constantly dragging us, with the exception of Trump. Every president we've had has dragged us into some sort of conflict. Like, we're just over it. And we keep getting mad about it. Oh, we got to stop this. Oh, we got to stop that. Like, I want to get to a place where the federal government's like, oh, snap. What are they doing next? What are they doing next? How does this going over with the people? Are those convention folks getting fired up? Like that. That's where I want this to go. I want them watching the news to be like, what is it that we're about to slap them over the head with next? That's what I want. What legislation, what amendment are they threatening to pull out next if we don't get our act together, right? Because these amendments that we get passed, whatever gets ratified, whatever doesn't, it almost doesn't even matter, in a sense that what's more important is that the process completes. The process completes and JBS is done. They fade into the ether and pretend they never had a problem with it in the first place. All the Publius holders and whatever, they're all gone. Now the Soros folks, they'll be around because they're going to be coming after our kids forever. You could bet that. They're not going away. The Marxists will be coming after our kids no matter how we legislate. They will try to infiltrate our schools again, no matter how much we eradicate their garbage from our schools. They will try to get in there again. They will never stop going after youth. They will never stop doing it. And it is what it is. We just have to be aware of it, and we need to just make sure we teach our kids at the kitchen table and don't rely on some public school to educate them, because they're probably going to do a rough job at it. Barbara Norman over on Facebook, the Capitol Police beat a woman to death on the ground. Yeah, they did. And, that was disturbing. All right. And there's a lot of footage on that from inside the Capitol showing an almost mob scene of Capitol Police beating this woman. And she ended up passing. And of course, there's, what was her name? Abbott, the one who was shot. That one was a little bit more, there was no need to shoot her. All right. I think anyone watching that footage knows there was no need to shoot that woman. I mean, you got one woman penetrating a very thin piece of window. I mean, you can let her come through and just detain her. like the idea that you had to put a 9mm in her belly was just ridiculous. But it is what it is. In normal, procedural stuff, I'll bet they can explain that one. She really shouldn't have been trying to break that window and get in anyway. But I don't want to excuse the death. That one was more complicated. The woman at the front door, yeah, that was a beating. That was just a straight beating of a woman. The Capitol Police are dirtbags. I back the blue, but I'll be honest with you. When we went through this whole COVID thing, there were examples of the blue taking orders like a bunch of sheep, infringing on people's rights and really, really showing some signs. New York City was one of the worst, really showing some signs that they'll take an order for just about anything. That if it comes as an order, they'll just take it. They're not worried about the Constitution or anything in their oath. If they get an order to go harass a group of people over some nonsense like wearing a mask or some nonsense like that, then they're complete lapdogs. Now, I'm not saying every cop is that way, but there were quite a few examples out there during the COVID pandemic. And those people, there's a special place in hell for those people. Forget backing them. There's a special place in hell for those people. As for all the good cops out there, God bless. I'll back the blue anyway. But the reality of the matter is, it did open my eyes a little bit. The 2020 opened my eyes a little bit as to just how far these people will take. I mean, I watched them drag an old man out of a restaurant in New York City over a mask mandate. And I'm just like, this is insane. Those people are going to rot. Those people, I don't back anybody blindly, right? Like that I think is the point that I want to make, is I don't back anybody blindly. But let me see what we got here. So Danny Mayer Jr. on Facebook might need an Article 5 freedom fighters. Yeah, you know what? We'll make some gear, right, for the grassroots. Absolutely. I mean, the grassroots are freedom fighters, are they not? Right? They are freedom fighters. But we can get some gear. I think that's a cool tag to, put out there. Freedom fighters, right? And then Barbara Norman, it's our capital, not those selected politicians. Absolutely, it's our building. You can't vandalize your own house. I agree with that too. And then there's this is a link. So yeah, try to refrain from the links, guys, on the live broadcast. Just let it end and then put the link. If you're going to put a link, I don't care if you promote other stuff as long as it's not like Marxist garbage. I don't allow that. This is my channel. I work too hard to let people put Marxist stuff. But if you're just putting, relevant stuff to the topics and stuff, just put it on after, because it confuses me. I'm doing the producing here, so it's like, I got to look over. I don't even vet half of these comments. I just put them up there. So like, it has left me susceptible sometimes to putting some nonsense out. And then convention of states is our best option. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's our only option. It's not even the best option. Joy DeMoitara, the guy that tried to save Roxanna Boylan, is still in the jail in Washington, D.C. Yeah. And I did a couple of videos on Cash Kelly, who's one guy who was in there for a long time. And as a result of doing that video, did a couple of videos on how long these January 6th detainees are in there. And I'm a little annoyed right now that the Republican House is not doing more to get these people out. Like I'm not a little bit annoyed. I'm very annoyed that there's not more being done to get these people out. I know Marjorie Taylor was, and I reported that too, when they went down to the prison to visit, and then they were tricked into going outside and the door locked on congressmen by some doo-doo guard. Like what's going on in that prison right now is an absolute violation of the Sixth Amendment, and someone needs to burn for this when it's all over. There's just, when you look, and I read through almost all of them, on the Justice Department website, and if you go into my channel and look for the video that I did on this, I believe you'll find it on the Cash Kelly video. I left a link in the YouTube description for the Department of Justice site where you can read the charges against everybody who's in there. All right. And they're all in there for trespassing, almost everybody. Some of them for like 3 different reworded counts of trespassing, but it all amounts to trespassing. And they've spent months in jail, months on end in jail under wild conditions, like in jail, like with like 23 hours solitary kind of stuff, like wild stuff that's going on in there. And I want all that to come out. I want it all out. I want to know exactly what went down in there. And they're throwing Congress people out. They don't want people to see what's going on in there. Like Congress right now doesn't really know the full story of what's going on in there. They just don't know. There's zero oversight on that prison, and they have authority over that prison. So the fact that they're, that all we got was 2 or 3 representatives who are engaging that is insane to me. The Speaker of the House should go down there personally, and take a look at the conditions those people are living in, and then demand their release. You can still try them and ticket them and do what you got to do for the misdemeanors, but they don't need to be rotting in prison for a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's insanity. All right, so let me see what I got here. You know what? You're right. We never see any justice no matter how much is exposed. This is why, right? Folks, as I explain the process of how I came to the point where I actually take the time out of my day to get so adamant in educating people about Article 5, this is the reason why. Like the idea, we've spent decades thinking this election, it'll all be different. Next election, it'll all be different. Oh, the world's going to end after this election. Oh, it's going to, like, enough. These are all people going in and being consumed by the same structurally broken government and system that's been around now since the introduction of the military-industrial complex. We were warned about it by Truman. Right after him came Eisenhower. He warned us about it in his final speech. And then Kennedy came in and was finally going to do something about it and took a bullet. And every president after that kept his mouth shut except Reagan, who also took a bullet. And even Trump cowed down when it was time to release all the documents. Something that he was told got him to say, all right, keep it. Even though by law they were supposed to be released in 2017, the only way they couldn't be is by order of the President of the United States, citing national security. That was the only way legally that those documents, the pages that haven't been released yet, could still be sealed. And you can get into your own theories about what that conversation was like. But the final decision from Trump was, all right, keep him sealed. So we can go wild with speculation on that one, but I'm pretty sure it had something to do with here's what happened to the last two people who wanted to unseal these documents. Or the last person, I should say. The documents are about the first person who wanted to cross them, right? So, but you look back at Reagan and Kennedy, it's like, yeah, it didn't go very well for either one. So, if I had to guess, Trump's ego is far too big to take an order like that from somebody, but everybody concerns himself with a bullet, right? And whether it's real or not real, he clearly was convinced that somehow it's not in our best interest to see those documents. So we've been living with this garbage forever. And it's like, at what point, the states created the federal government, and yet we act like the federal government created the states. Like we act like because people are just taught, oh, well, federal law supersedes state law. Well, sort of, right? Like how the marijuana law is looking. Not every state's following that, and the government just took a back seat. The reality of the matter is, when the states say, screw you, federal government, there's nothing the federal government can really do. The only thing they can do is say, well, we're going to withdraw funds. Well, if we get this convention of state called, they're not going to have funds to withdraw. They're going to be running on a tight budget that's going to be balanced, and that's it. There's not going to be dependence. Too many states have sold their sovereignty, and the reality, and this is a motivating factor, by the way, for some of them to still vote against it, is their own horrific mismanagement. I've actually heard, it was a couple of years ago, one of these. I want to say it was in South Carolina. I forget, but South Carolina is now on board. But this is a couple of years ago, and someone made the point that like 40% of our budget is made up of federal funding, as if there was as if he didn't see that as a problem. Like he mentioned it like, well, we can't do this because it's like, really? How about taking a look at the crap job? And I don't want to dump on South Carolina if it wasn't them, but this came up more than once in different legislators, where they talk about what percentage of their budget is federal government. And it's a disgusting thing to listen to. But what's more disgusting is to listen to the person bringing it up talk about it like, well, we can't do this because we're so freaking dependent on the. We've made ourselves so dependent on them, like we've sold our sovereignty. So we can't buy our sovereignty back. This is what they're saying. Like they don't realize that that's what they're saying because they're so used to things just being what they are that they just say this dumb stuff. But it's amazing to me. And the only way to get this ship righted is to do it directly. Look, this country was not designed to be run by Congress and the president or SCOTUS. It was designed to be run by your local legislator. That's what the guy that's within driving distance to your home, who represents your district. Okay? Your district. When they passed the 17th Amendment, these dootaroos all go, yay, well, it's a thing for freedom because now people elect senators directly. Like, why? Because you don't teach them. They don't understand what the importance is of having senators appointed by local legislators. Because when you get a guy like Mitt Romney in there, he's in there. Once he gets voted in, it's 6 years. No stopping him. How about this? How cool would it be if we didn't pass the 17th Amendment and friggin' right now, the people of Utah could be like, you treasonous dirtbag, I want you out. And go to your local legislator, and everybody goes to their local legislator and like, you remove this guy or we're removing you. You could bet that they would remove him, which is what they had the power to do before this, which is why they have 6-year terms. It's why they have 6-year terms, because they could be removed at any time. But they changed that and convinced everybody it was a good idea. It drives me freaking insane. Let me see what we got here. No, Barbara, I would say Reagan was absolutely elected. The guy won like 49 states. Like he almost covered the whole damn country. So, yeah, but he was shot too. So, all right, your point is made. Your point is made. But I just want to throw Reagan in there for the sake of saying it. And then I think the arrest of those criminals that are guilty of high crimes against us in public records by their vote and signature would really help. Yeah, you know I'm guessing there is some cynicism in that, and I can appreciate that. And here's one: constitutional enforcement would help a lot. Here's the thing, Danny. They follow the Constitution. Most people don't realize this. I get that a lot. Like if they just follow the Constitution we have now, they are following the Constitution we have now. Okay. The problem is they're following a different brand than we are. Okay. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're not aware, and I'm going to look here and see if I don't think I uploaded the graphic of it. Dang it. All right. So you can look it up. There's an annotated version of the Constitution of the United States. So what do I mean by annotated? Well, it's a 3,000 page book, hardbound, with on the side officially says the Constitution of the United States. And it includes every single Supreme Court decision that has ever been made. And that is what they go by. That's what the courts go by. That's what the politicians go by. And the problem that we have is that over the last little more than a century, the courts have slowly increased the power of the federal government through improper translation of things like the Commerce Clause, etc. And as a result, these powers, like regulatory agencies, like the courts have ruled that they're okay. They're not okay. There's nothing about regulatory agencies that are okay. But the courts have deemed that they are, and they now get into the minutia of what they can and can't regulate. They're not allowed to regulate anything. They're not elected. They're accountable to no one. They're not allowed to do a damn thing that's punishable. They could give advice. They could guide Congress informationally, but they can't go. I mean, the EPA goes and finds people to the point where they're seizing their land. Like that is not something that a regulatory agency is constitutionally allowed to do. And that's something, by the way, that would be addressed by this calling of convention of states. All right. But the courts have slowly given this power, and now there's no recourse because the only recourse to overturn a Supreme Court decision, other than a future Supreme Court overturning themselves, but with their adherence to precedent, they will never do that. They will never undo all of the damage that they have done. There's only one way in our Constitution to have that done, and that's through constitutional amendment. And since they will not, since we know Congress is not going to propose these, the only option left, the only bullet, the only constitutional bullet that sits in our gun is the convention of states option for proposing amendments. That's it. That's the only option we have. And the idea, think about it, right? Because I've thought this through hard before I went all in on this. I thought this through hard. And John Birch decided thinks we're going to use nullification. Like nullification is what happens when all is burned down and lost. That you can't nullify thousands and thousands of different pieces of legislation, each state nullifying independently. I mean, it's just like nullification is solid when you want to say you're coming out with this law, we find it unconstitutional, we're not following this law. But you can't go backwards now, and it's just a mess. But like the reality of the matter is, we need to call this convention. That's it. It's that simple. And the sooner we, the people, educate our local representatives, all right, everybody who's watching this should have signed the petition by now. All right, you go to our website, www.thepatriotthinktank.com. There's a link there. There's 3 links there, actually. One that will take you to sign the petition, another that will allow you to volunteer, and another that will take you to College University so that you can then watch the material, read the material, learn about the topic. And like I said, go to the opposition on it, read their stuff as well. I assure you that if you have any skill set at all in researching, comparing, and contrasting, you will be signing that petition as soon as you're done with it. I assure you. There's the amount of people that leave John Birch Society and head over to Convention Estates because their eyes are opened is almost endless. I mean, the leadership is all throughout. Kenneth Quinn over at All Things Article 5 on YouTube, like, he was all in. He used to be the guy handing them the DVDs, handing them to legislators to scare them. And then he learned about it, and now he heads a movement, and now he's a big part of U.S. term limits, which also is calling a convention. We're all in the same gang. He's just focused specifically on term limits, but his work on JBS, in explaining JBS, is invaluable. It's All Things Article 5. It's on YouTube. I encourage everyone to go and watch that series of videos. He makes his claim to Robert Brown's $10,000 challenge from JBS. He goes ahead and explains the history and the cult-like atmosphere and the cult-like beginnings of JBS. The fact that John Birch would never, his own family says he would never have condoned what they're doing now. And even their founder's wife, who he's passed away, but even she's like, I'm disassociated. They've gone off the rails. Like, that organization is a shell of itself. And frankly, even when it was itself, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was a bit loony. It's one of those like, you got that right, but these 5 things are nuts. And it was one of those freaking organizations. So says, you're right. The states being so controlled by the federal government, they are controlling our states. Yeah. And that's what it is. That's what it is, Joy, is that they're just, we've lost touch. They haven't taught civics. And I was talking about this with Mike Arnold the other day. You know, they slowly and quietly removed civics from the classroom and replaced it with social studies. Like, my era we didn't even talk civics. It was social studies. Every grammar school class I took was social studies. Social studies. Just break that word. Just think of that word now in hindsight, right? And realize what they did, right? Realize what they did. And now we have generations of people who don't understand how bills are passed. They don't understand how state sovereignty works. They don't understand how their own state legislature works. They don't understand who their representative is. They think the president is the most powerful person in the country. They think the federal government owns the states. They believe this stuff. They think free speech, should be regulated. Like this is stuff, and those views get more radical with each generation. Right, with each generation, because they go a little bit further with each generation. So now we're at the point where we got young men dressing as women, and it's just nuts. It's just nuts, and they're not transgender. It's just like a trend. They're just being convinced of this stuff by educators. They're being convinced of this stuff. It's just madness. It's straight mayhem, and at some point. Like, everyone who understands civics now taught themselves. Let's just face it. You either taught yourself or you were blessed enough to have the rare find of a good college professor because they weren't teaching it in high school. I mean, you might have had one, maybe there were some, so I don't speak for every school in the nation, but this wasn't the type of stuff that went down in high school history. And so this type of stuff is where people, we've got to re-educate ourselves as to what it was that made this country successful in the first place. This is an experiment, folks. When they try to tell you, oh, well, they wrote the Constitution but allowed slavery. It's an experiment, folks. This has never been done. What they did at that time had never been done in all of human history. All of human history. It had never been done. And so they did it, understanding that it was an experiment and that it would grow and that the wrongs that they knew that there were wrongs that existed. Jefferson spent most of his life, his first, when he was voted into the House of Burgess before the revolution even happened, his first move was to try and get Virginia, I believe it was Virginia, to allow slave owners to legally free their slaves. He was shunned and ridiculed and whatever, blah, blah, blah. but they were all keenly aware of the problem of slavery and the irony that existed there. And the reality was there were other problems as well. But the fact of the matter is, those problems were like, first they had to establish it, then start to deal with, one problem after the other. And that's exactly what the country did. And that particular problem was the biggest irony, was the biggest problem. And as a result, it was rectified with a lot of blood from all types of people. There was enough blood spilled in the Civil War to that covered just about everyone. So in the end, the right side won, though. In the end, slavery was abolished, and in the end, the Union was kept together, right? And in the end, we continued to progress. Women's suffrage, it went on and on. Civil rights, right? Didn't go on easy, and the experiment continued. But the place that we're at now should be what the founding fathers truly envisioned. But instead, we've allowed Marxists to turn us all on each other and start believing stuff that's just not true. And because of that division that has been stoked, and it was not easy. I mean, we're talking a persistent enemy here, folks. This was not easy for them to do. They knocked over Venezuela in a matter of a few years. Cuba, few years. Soviet Union, few years. China, few years. United States, took them about 50 years to get us to the point that we're at now. 50 years of slow, methodical, indoctrination, brainwashing, taking over of systems, making things normal that are morally bankrupt. 50 years it took them of techniques that took other countries down in a few years. Vietnam, another one. All these countries fell in a few years. Same message, same terminology even. But we've been so dumbed down now that we don't even know that. We don't even know that even though they're using terms like solidarity and forward, like, we don't even see that. Most of our youth don't even see the significance in the use of that terminology. It's just maddening that this is the state that of affairs that we're in. And now we have a globalist movement who has been incredibly effective. I mean, we've been hit, it started with the Soviets and their ideological subversion, right? Active measures, as they called it. And Yuri Bezmenov will tell you all about that. And by the way, I added a shirt into the t-shirt store. It's got a picture of Yuri Bezmenov. It says Yuri was right. I'm going to be wearing it on the show. I ordered one for myself. It'll be coming in like a week or so, or in a few days. Next time you see me, I'll probably have it on. But yeah, it started with ideological subversion and active measures. You've got, actually, really at the same time around China, the CCP was formed in 1949 and began their 100-year war, which they were not public about, but has been completely, now that history is spoken, it's completely understood and documents are there. Listening to them explain it. The dissidents have defected and given the scoop. Like, we're well aware that China believed in 1949 that they were going to take down the United States within 100 years. But just talk about how much respect that they have to have for us to say it's going to take us 100 years. We've got 1 billion human beings in our country, and it's going to take us 100 years to take down that country. But they're like so dedicated to it that they're currently on pace to do that. They're currently on pace to do that. And we just went through the entire process being like, wow, USA, USA. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, all of this is continuing to go on. In the 80s, we're listening to groups like Motley Crue and Black Sabbath and, and whatnot, all the satanic madness that was in heavy metal back then. Not that the bands were all in on it. They were just young, stupid, and following what the producers told them. But it's not a coincidence that the producers were pumping all that satanic crap in there, because dissociating people from their religion is a big part of the Marxist play. It's a big part of how they took down every country. You break people from their religion, and you break them from the family. That's how you do it. That's how it's done. And that's exactly what they did here. But we're in such a place, no one even wanted to admit it. No one even wanted to admit it until COVID. Now COVID came and everyone's starting to see it right as plain day. So now all the people that normally ask questions are like, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. What about this? What about that? What about this? And they're looking for their own answers. And when they find them, that's when the eyes, bing, they open. All right, let me dig through some comments here. I swore I was only going to be on for a half hour and do a quick shout, and then I went off on that rant. But I appreciate you all for hanging with me on that and commenting. I want to make sure I get through some of these comments. Let me see here. Tim Bresnan or Bresnahan says that's why Trump backed out, to investigate, then initiate. Yeah, look, Trump was a big play when it came to foreign affairs. He understands what's going on with this stuff because they're coming after. Trump got elected, and these globalists just went absolutely trigger happy. They just went nuts. He was not supposed to be the president of the United States. He was the absolute worst person. Like, they figured worst case scenario, they end up with a Jeb Bush, something like that. He'll play ball and he'll do, whatever they need him to, and still yell like he's on the side of righteousness. And then they got Trump, and it all went nuts, which was his greatest contribution to this country, by the way, in my opinion, was all the stuff that came out as a result of them hating him so much. So you're right. The states are being so controlled by the federal government. Yeah, we did that one. Okay. Thank you, Joy. See that? I'm even like backing up. So here's Danny from Facebook. Article 5 is DEFCON 2. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. What do we got here? I'll throw this up. Good job, Leo. I agree. 100%. 100%. Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. I mean, he's the worst, right? This guy, this dude's coming in. Look, obviously, I'm a conservative-minded person, so I wasn't a big Obama fan, Clinton fan, etc. But this guy takes doo-doo to a whole new level. Holy smokes. Watching his wife, like, go and find him and catch him and put him back in trance so he starts drifting off. It's just unbelievable. Tom Shin over on Facebook. If nullification worked, we would already have a good federal government. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%. And it's not that nullification. It is our duty to do. The nullification is legit. It's just, it's the last, it's the last resort. It's the thing you do when it's all gone to crap, and you've tried everything you can. So it's all gone to crap, but we haven't tried everything we can. And this is way too powerful for something for us to not know about, to not understand Article 5, or to just buy into the fear mongering and start being afraid. Like it's like we're at the point now where they've gaslit us so much that we don't even trust each other. And that can't happen. If that was really the case, if it were true that we can't trust each other, then it's over already. So just hold it, because who cares what happens? It's over already. This is what I don't understand. It's kind of like when Trump was appealing to the black vote, and he was like, what do you got to lose? Every single person you've elected, your cities have gotten worse, your neighborhoods have gotten worse, everything's gotten worse. What do you got to lose? What's going to happen? Things are going to get worse. You pretty much know you're going to get that from them. Article 5 is a much more secure process than that. Like, we know how it'll work. We know how it'll work. And we also know that California, New York, and some other states are going to try and muck it up. Like Soros, so I'm sure there will be some Soros people coming in to represent California and stuff like that. This is my projection. I don't know what's going to happen, but they want this process to be chaos, so they will try. They will try. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Because they know like I know, and like I tell you, that when this ends, regardless of what gets ratified or not, the game is changed forever. The game's changed forever. And I tell this to the cause grassroots folks I talk to all the time. I tell them all the time in a joking manner, if you're at an event and you're at a meeting or you're at a legislature getting ready to speak, whatever it may be, if the cameras are there, make sure they get your good side and smile. because you may very well end up in a textbook that'll be around for 250 years telling the story about how this all went down and how, for the first time in American history, the American people stepped up and truly showed, after decades of allowing it to fall apart, truly showed that the people are the ones in control. All right, now I'm going to commit to trying to get these comments through, because so I have someone on Twitch. Let me see if they're still with me. I don't know if they're still with me, but they're writing in Russian, I think. I don't know. Maybe you guys will know. Is this Russian? Either way, I can't respond to it. So, but Eternal one, whatever. I can't respond to you. I want to post you, but I can't respond to you. Do I have any comments on Rumble? No. Rumble folks, to the right of the screen, you can comment under the live chat section. I will get to your question. If anybody has an Article 5 question specifically, then bring that up. I will make it a priority as soon as I see it, regardless of what I'm talking about. Yeah, we understand how it's not working. It absolutely isn't working. And I think the fear of loss due to a generation of programming stops everything. And that's what it is. It's all fear. Like this is why, folks, I say this right here, is that unity is better than greater than diversity. The reality of the matter is, I say this too, there's a lot of Democrats out there who are very disenfranchised right now, just the voters, not the politicians. They're disenfranchised because they too don't agree with all this crazy crap. Like, the things we're arguing with Democrats about now are like very different than the things we argued with them about years ago. Like I mean, there's staple issues like abortion and things like that, but in the end, unions and stuff. But in the end, they're not arguing. Only the media is arguing. The left, the actual Democrat voter, is not arguing that men should be allowed in the women's room, and that all of this trans stuff is like, they see how creepy it is, and they're disenfranchised because Trump's a very polarizing figure. They've committed to themselves mentally they would never support him, so now they're stuck in this independent gap. But they end up not knowing who to vote for because they know Biden's brain dead, but they know they can't vote for Trump. So then they're in this position. And like, those people, for the sake of this movement, can easily be brought on board because they're still rational human beings. And the topics are not partisan. Like, term limits are not partisan. Fiscal restraints, everyone knows the government's overspending. When it comes to overreach of power, everyone knows the government has overstepped its bounds. Like, we're all in sync here. And this is one of those deals where, like, you and your brother are fighting all the time, but then when someone comes in from the outside and says something, you both turn against him. Right? That's kind of the scenario. And then you can go back to fighting once that argument's over, once you're done knocking out the third party. That's how I see this. That's all we got with social studies also. Yeah, never learned about civics. Oh, yeah. Civics was gone in the 80s. Civics was already removed from classrooms in the 80s. Like I said, folks, this is not an overnight process. This is not something that just suddenly they suddenly in the last, millennials, they took no. Most Gen X did not learn civics properly. Now, people in Gen X understand civics, but that was self-taught. We learned that along the way. We did not learn. There was no class. There was no civics class. It was removed pretty much nationally. So, and social studies became the thing, right? Social studies, social justice, social this, social that. Like, this is the game plan. It's the same game plan, like same game plan they used in every Marxist takeover and crash. They all crash. So everyone has used this. And the funny thing is, what they're teaching these kids now is that Marxism has never been fully implemented. They're trying to separate it from communism, like it's not, like communism doesn't operate under complete Marxist principles. It's insane. But if you're young and you don't have a backdrop and you have a professor who's got 12 degrees in idiocracy and gender studies, and you believe this man, It's crazy, but that's where we're at. That's where we're at, and it's disgusting. Let's see. So a lot of comments coming out to Facebook, folks, today. I appreciate that. I got Austin Berserker here on YouTube. I didn't see the comment, but yeah, here he goes. So I got someone on YouTube. Let me find him in case I missed him. But he's saying exactly what I just said now, and I didn't see his comment, but I'm trying to go find it. I don't know why he's not on here, unless it's fairly new. Let me see. Yep, here he is. All right. So there he is. So this is what you get. This is what they get, right? You don't even know what Marxism is. So they're taught this definition of Marxism that just pretends that it didn't exist in Mao's China. It didn't exist in Lenin's in Leninism. It didn't exist with Stalin. It didn't exist with Ho Chi Minh. It didn't. The principles of Marxism are what they stoke the fires with to bring in the new regime. And the same thing in Cuba, same thing in Venezuela, and now, here we are, and the battle continues. The battle continues, and we'll have to continue to fight this fight, as long as we can, but we will win this fight. And when we're done putting the fiscal restraints on the federal government, it won't matter. Everybody can talk what they want about Marxism. It'll be literally impossible to operate under a balanced budget. It'll be literally impossible. There will be no hope for Marxism at that point. This is the silver bullet to kill the vampire. This is it. So whether you believe Marxism is really a threat or you don't, it doesn't really matter. We get these amendments through, and it's in clear writing that the budget must be balanced. We're done. We're done. You can forget the Klaus Schwabs and his band of merry doo-doos. So Leo Albrecht, what the American politicians have allowed to happen to our children is sick and disgusting. I agree. We have to bring God back into our lives and remind the government that they work for us. If we allow this damn treaty to be signed with the WHO, I fear bloodshed on our soil. What's the administration doing? Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that whole treaty WHO thing. They do that every year. The reality is it just doesn't work that way. And the sites that are promoting that stuff, look, I would love to put out a video on that whole WHO treaty piece. And it's just a cleverly crafted video or talking point to get clicks. That's really what it is. Have you noticed that every year they come out with it right at the last second, something happens and they decide to not move forward? There's a reason for that. All right. It's almost like WHO treaty season whenever that comes around. And maybe some of these people on their podcast really believe in this stuff, but most of them know that they're lying. Most of them know that it's not going to happen because it just doesn't work that way. They even craftily put in treaty so that they could say it's a presidential power to sign a treaty. It has to actually be a treaty. You don't get like they may get to redefine racism, homophobia, and every other phobia they want, but you can't redefine the word treaty. Like it just doesn't work like that. And there's nothing about that entire situation that's a treaty. So, Leo, I would tell you to just don't worry about it. There's plenty to worry about. This just isn't one of them. Like there's plenty, the WF is incredibly real. The threat from them is incredibly real. What they're doing in Utah right now, I can't get into because it's going to take too long. But regarding our energy supply on the West Coast, like this is going to happen everywhere else as well. I told you guys it's going to be the energy. That they're going for the energy, they're going for the food supply, and they're going for the currency. That's where the crises are going to come in. That's it. Because there's always the only way to turn that stuff over is through crisis. And they're in the process of manufacturing the rest of those crises right now. Right? We went over the financial crisis, but the energy crisis is a very real one as well. And that's why Ukraine's the perfect war. It helps them in all three areas, right? Number 1 and 2 in fertilizer production, Ukraine and Russia. As far as number 1 producer of gas in the world, really, I believe, is Russia. Close to it. Certainly the number 1 provider to Europe is Russia. So there's your energy, right? And then and you got the food with the fertilizer and these bio labs. I don't even know what the deal is now. They're coming. Russia's making claims on them now because they own that territory. So there should be a lot coming up in the near future about that. But if you remember, I was very curious about the breakout of that unknown novel. I love the word novel, H1N1 virus that infected all those chickens 7 months ago. And I was telling you, your egg prices are going to go wild. And not that I was Nostradamus, it's just you see it happening. That's the natural outcome. But yeah. So let me see. All right, so we got autistic berserker. I'm gonna, as you know, I give the left due time. I believe autistic berserker said he was an anarchist, though, which is even better. So that adds another one to the people I give time to. He says Marxism is just a critique of capitalism. That's it. No, it's not autistic. It's just not. I don't know how else to address that except to say that that's just a wrong statement. I mean, yes, it is a critique of capitalism, but it's not just a critique of capitalism. It's an entire process of taking over a country. I can't entertain the idea. I'm assuming that you're younger. I might be wrong, but I'm assuming when I say younger, I mean under 30 or around 30. I can't entertain the idea that people just deny the fact that Marxism has been responsible for so much death in this world, despite its promises of solidarity and everything else. And it just never goes away. It always goes after the youth. That's why I say they'll always come after your children. Long after we pass this convention of states, long after we get our house back in order, long after we reestablish ourselves in the world, the Marxists will still be there in the shadows coming after your children, trying to teach them this garbage. It's always the children because adults won't believe it. It's always the children because adults never believe it. And that's just real talk. An autistic berserker had commented that he is 49, so he's not young. So I guess he's been in this for a long time, or maybe he just converted. I don't know, but I don't know how one gets into anarchy. I don't even fully understand anarchy, except for the fact that it's chaos. But I remember he commented once before. So, so, so Barbara Norman says, or a troll. Now, look, it sounds like trolling, right? Because he's coming in with a completely different perspective, and I can appreciate that. I don't agree with it in any way whatsoever, but I can appreciate the fact that someone does that. He hasn't said anything here that's trolling per se. He doesn't like capitalism, and it's okay for someone to live in the United States and not like capitalism. It's not okay for the United States to give up its free markets to Marxism. That's not okay. That's not okay. So I'm not going to condemn somebody for speech, and autistic berserker says it's funny as hell. I'm the only one here. I didn't even look at YouTube. How many are on YouTube? Yeah, YouTube, autistic berserker. YouTube doesn't promote. There's about 15 people, 20 people on right now across platforms. We're on Facebook, Rumble, and Twitch right now. Twitch probably has one, if that as well. But YouTube, they're not big fans. I don't even know why I still do the YouTube thing, but I do because a lot of people still watch YouTube, and over time the videos pick up. But yeah, that is bigly sad. I wish YouTube would allow us to distribute better, but they don't. So I don't beg. I stick with Facebook, and even Facebook brings us, even Facebook has, it was about once we started accelerating on Facebook and the following got up to about 15,000, Facebook just all of a sudden, like everything, not just even the new stuff that I was putting out, it was every single freaking video on the channel just stopped getting like I stopped progressing. And I know that when that happens, because I've done this, I've tested videos before. Normally, they would release it in like 2 or 3 days, and things would go back to normal. But this one they've kept on for like 3 weeks now. So I think Facebook might have officially had it with me. We'll see what's going on. But that's why now, in the last month or two, I've been trying to promote the Rumble channel, because even though we don't get immense distribution from Rumble, I really haven't tried to get distribution from Rumble. So, my attitude is I'd rather grow the Rumble channel, because that's where everybody who speaks truth is heading anyway. Nobody wants to be a part of YouTube anymore. For nobody for stuff like this. If you're speaking on anything political, everyone's bailing out. Kim Iverson ran out. I know what's his name? Bongino ran out. Like everyone's doing these like short clips on YouTube and then cutting them off and letting people know you can continue to watch on the Rumble channel at this link and whatever, and they're moving over. So Rumble is growing, and I'm hoping to grow with it. Hopefully those we got 5 or 6 more on there watching right now. So again, we're young with Rumble. So of the 570 or so followers we have, if the 5 watching now are not in that group, I would appreciate it if you went ahead and smash that subscribe button. But on that note, it is 6:40, and I do have to cook for my family. So, and I am making chili, which is out. My chili is pretty bomb. So everyone's kind of looking forward to me putting an end to this. But I do appreciate everybody's commentary. I do appreciate all of you. So we got BJ Hogan here. Hold on, I missed him. That's right. We need to stop buying from China, period. Yeah, you're right, BJ. You're right. We do need to disassociate economically with China. Without us working with them. I mean, China's got problems coming up anyway. I mean, major problems. So like it's totally a propaganda tool to be like they're this major powerhouse. Their population is dying off. By 2050, they're expected to be about half of what they are now. That's 500 million less people because they're just not having children. Because ever since they just released that one child only law in 2015 or so, but people didn't start. There was no baby boom that came of that. They just continued to allow it. And so places like Japan, there's adult diapers outsell baby diapers. China's in that same situation. So for those that tell you there's a population crisis, there is not. There is actually an underpopulation crisis right now. And you can feel free to look that up, but I don't want to get too deep into that because I am looking to bolt off. Like I said, I do have to get this chili cooking. But that being said, just to recap in the very beginning, I wanted to cover the stuff I titled first. Wyoming, we're looking at Monday, maybe early next week, if not Monday, to come to a vote. If they vote in favor, this is the final phase for them. We will be announcing Wyoming as number 20 on board for Convention of States. The rest of the action is still cooking, so day by day, I'm just staying in communication with everybody, trying to get the latest scoop on everything. Iowa had passed 2 subcommittees and then passed a full committee last week, so they'll be getting brought, I believe, to the House. One of the chambers they're going into now. The other one's still waiting to go to committee. So a lot of action, a lot of movement right now. Stay tuned. Definitely a good time to be a subscriber. Keep in touch because this is how we play offense, folks. This is what it's all about. So if you haven't already, if you're still with me, and I see some of you are, sign the petition. Go to our website, thepatriotthinktank.com. You'll find all the links you need there. Until next time, I'm out.
And like that,